Hello, and welcome to WBC's January 2026 election after the results, presidential election after the results broadcast. Here today is me, NicheGuy, writer at the Harlon Times, and also a host of WBC things. And then additionally, my co-host, CodeWiz, another writer at the Harlon Times, and another regular on WBC. Uh, Thank you for joining us today as we go over the results. Code, got any words? Speaking of which, it's time we give you our projection. Let me just grab this. Based on the numbers outside of the electoral station, which have been covered widely, there is now a projected Moonlighter presidency, which is big for the HVP, as Code said earlier. So now we're here to discuss that. So, first of all, the big elephant in the room with these results is the margin. 65% isn't something which has been seen in a presidential election before, up until now, which is a very large. Yes. Uh, Through this margin, it is clear that Moonlighter has a strong mandate from the people to be president. Uh, what's less clear is how this margin was achieved, which I'm sure polls are gonna iron out later on, and we're gonna see if Moonlighter somehow assembled a larger electoral coalition of voters via taking from NI voters or seemingly old bar voters which have shifted now to the HPP. Through that, we'll see in the future, more than likely, how this happened, how this may reflect in April, and if it's something to keep an eye on, which I almost certainly think it is something to keep an eye on. Would you agree? Yeah. I will say, as it stands, these results widely fit within what has been polled over the past couple of months, as you said, by our by our polling what you call it, by our polling partner at Westfield Institute Polling, which has been large swings to the HPP, as you said, from bar and NI voters, which this result, in fact, beats out all of the polling results so far, which is likely reflective of Moonlighter as a uniting candidate over party lines. But if this reflects, if this reflects as in Bar and NI both coalesce behind one candidate in Robs, and Moonlighter was only voted for by HPP, then this is going to reflect in a majority in April should the trends continue. But if it's a NI HPP coalition that got Moonlighter into office, then this more than likely can't indicate if the HPP is going to get a majority in April, but it's definitely still it's a large indicator. It's a bellwether. It's the first time we have actual concrete results from the electorate since last October, when large upswings in Harlonian politics have happened since, again, as you said. And I do believe it may be reflective of the fact that the last president, it's Adam Lai, from Bar, his presidency was noted with the essentially 2 weeks it took to cast a tiebreaking vote on the budget, which many attribute to prolonging the shutdown that we dealt with over December and January. Would you agree on that take? Yes, because since April of last year, the HPP, for the first time, it didn't place first, which was a huge electoral moment in Harlonian history. Well, it didn't place first in Parliament. It had previously also not won the presidential election and also tied in other elections. But the wider general election, where it did not place first, we covered that last year on another election broadcast. But the it marks a change, and if this transitions into April with these exact margins for the HPP, then it will be a tone indicator at a possible return to what was in pre 2025 politics, where the HPP just dominated the narrative every single time. And rather, while either plurality, which was seen in October, or majority, which was last seen in, I believe, which was last seen in April 2024, it would be over the next couple of months, we have stuff we need to look at, and how this transitions for the public is either going to be good, bad, but we'll be here to cover it. I would agree with that sentiment, as overall, we've had to see what the candidates have presented, and how they presented that, the public vote on it. And Robs, as the bar candidate, I think needed a wider electoral net with their platform. I wasn't entirely familiar with the platform, as I've been a bit busy for the couple of past days. But it's clear that they didn't go far enough in some places. As an example, uh, Moonlighter, as a member of the Aurora Party, it comes from, I would say, a more factional side of the HGP, which is definitely something that Robs could have taken advantage of, but was not cited as a point of contention throughout the entire race. And I believe that generally, the as it stands, bar in a next presidential election or NI or whatever party comes out, is going to need a candidate which can properly outline concerns beyond just not being the anti-HPP option. Would you agree on that sentiment? I would agree on that. Something which would be incredibly useful to bar in that case, which the HPP utilized, was primaries. As I would say, the HPP primaries help propel candidates forward, force them to make a platform for their candidacy, and that platform then went on into the general election, which, technically speaking, as it stands, Moonlighter faced a shorter margin of victory inside of primaries than they did at the general, which is representative of the fact that it was a more competitive process, and the primaries, they forced something. They forced a platform out, and that platform that went into the general helped beat Rob's massively. And next time that bar goes into an election, they're going to need to think about how we can promote our own proper forming of a platform and a future possible mandate. Because as it stands, we look at the manifestos. You look at the length of the HVP manifesto compared to the Rob's one, it does not compare. It's multiple pages compared to one, which has multiple incorrect statements. And how the candidates look forward from there, yet to be seen. I would agree wholeheartedly because the crop stores have been reopened for a while, and the fact that Robs did not understand that, and it showed a massive weak point in his campaign, and the fact that he wasn't that particularly active in terms of making sure accurate claims were both in his manifesto and inside of his campaign points, which I would say did definitely play a massive part in the loss for Ovs today and the victory we're talking about Moonlighter right now. But now, I would like to move on into a new topic of conversation. That being what this means for April, or, well, more accurately, the next general election. The next general election isn't entirely set for April. It can come sooner, depending on what Parliament votes on, or a dissolution. But the for for basic sake, I'm just going to say April. For the next general election, what does this result mean? Well, it means that moving on into okay, so moving on to HPP, there is going to be a primary for leadership, as Yoshipai has announced. Well, there was going to be a primary, but Yoshipai announced they're not seeking re-election, meaning it's going to be a heavily competitive primary, and that primary was already going to be competitive before. But now there's more than likely going to be more candidates which come out, and that primary, based on Moonlighter's victory, it could be an indicator for how that primary is going to go, as Code, as you're aware, you know Moonlighter quite well, yes? Yeah. So that could indicate if those voters who voted for Moonlighter go ahead and it's been a bit clear now for a while that CodeWiz, you're going to be running for the HPP leadership next election. Yes. Yes. So if those same voters that vote for Moonlighter in the primary vote for Moonlighter in vote for Code inside of the next primaries, it could be an indicator that Code that there could be a upcoming what we call it, that the electoral coalition that got Moonlighter into now the presidency could get CodeWiz into the Dire House. And whilst there have been other declared candidates who intend to seek the leadership, like Pro Survival, if Pro can expand upon his coalition, that could prove it could prove rather competitive. But if he can't, then there's a very likely chance that we could just see the same results, but with Moonlighter instead switched out for CodeWiz. Would you agree with that opinion? To be clear, the margin of victory for Moonlighter was by they won a majority by 5 points, also 55.6%, which as compared to Pro's 44.4% in the second round. Continue. Go ahead. All right, but yes, as it stands, this in addition to what do we think is going to happen in terms of NI in the upcoming election? Because they were not. It's unclear where they stood in this presidential election. They didn't openly back Robs, but they also didn't say that Moonlighter was an option, was a choice that they were going to choose. So it could be an indicator that possibly. Oh, go ahead.
Yesterday's parliamentary meeting how even though the NI and bar have been we have also seen a few NI members in past more open to negotiating with the HPP to more HPP support, even if the entire party had not picked a side. But yeah.
I would agree thoroughly,
And,
because
mhm.
as it stands, NI is currently leading in the polls. They are at level with Bar, which was not the case in October, and if trends continue, it's unclear where they're gonna go and how it's gonna end up. And depending on where those voters end up, it could prove a massive, and I do mean massive, margin of victory for the HPP come next general election. And I suppose the question is if, depending on if Januki or if Liam is the leader next election, if they can reassemble their coalition in time for the next election. And if they can't, then it could prove to be rather fatal to NI's position as the main opposition to the HPP come, next general election, come next parliament. And if they can't, then one of the main reasons that they formed their coalition will be dismantled fundamentally, which is presumably a massive problem for them.
Yeah.
Now moving on to what this means for Bar. This election result is obviously not what Bar hoped for, or at least not what clear Bar
Mhm.
leadership hoped for. Ocelot was campaigning heavily for Robs, as was Mako, and the fact that
Yeah.
this margin is not close is definitely going to it's going to simmer on Bar leadership on what mistakes were made and what they need to fix in time for the next parliamentary election, because if they can't fix those mistakes, then the gains that they have made polling wise in the past couple of weeks will not reflect. Obviously, there were a number of spoiled ballots. Depending, it's unclear where those spoiled ballots came from on terms of possible voters. But if they came from Bar or if they came from HPP, that could either indicate a incredibly large problem for Bar if those came from HPP, and if the
Mhm.
HPP gets those votes unspoiled next time, then that's a very cunning margin that's going to appear. Or if they're from Bar, then they need to figure out how to get their voters to correctly do the possible voting. And if they can't, then they're going to bleed electorally again. And if they don't do that, if they can manage to do that, then it could mark something not of this election, but of them becoming the main force of opposition to either the HPP next general election, or possibly even becoming first place. Polls currently do not indicate as a possibility, but anything is possible in due time. So
Yeah.
yes. Would you agree with that?
2 points I'd like to raise. What?
What?
Yes, I do agree with that. Well, 2 points. I agree with that, but 2 points I would like to kind of point out is, Bar in its history, most of their early history came from them winning the presidency. So, and then running in the um the most recent general election. But we've seen that generally Barr has been very hostile towards other parties, which did not happen before the most recent general election. So, if this is a forecoming towards the next election, it could prove detrimental to Barr. Also, oh dear, I forgot what my other point was. Um, yeah, would you agree with that, Niche?
I would agree with that entirely. As it stands, I would say that Barr's main point in the last general election, their vote mainly comprised of those who didn't want to vote HVP because they were being a bit they weren't entirely active throughout the previous term, and those who didn't want to vote NI, as NI was definitely less active than the HVP in the previous term, and they did not manage a effective active government in terms of what the electorate viewed. The effect of Barr came as a protest vote, and whilst they had momentum, I would say that their way of choosing how to enact that has been not entirely it hasn't been an entirely effective messaging, at least that's what the polls say. And they've been playing a lot more hardball, I believe, largely as a result of Mako 1's uh, proposition, how they should go. And their hardball approach has, well, based on today, it's unclear if this was one of the main reasons behind the floundering of Robs in the polls. But if it is, they need to seriously look in the mirror and see if they believe that they should continue that hardball approach. And if they do, then they either try and get the public to back it, or they face massive losses inside of April. And would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other point I'd like to raise is, due to hostility of Barr towards the other um, parties, both, well, mainly to the HVP, but also somewhat to Barr, has led them to has led the HVP and NI to seem more friendly towards each other. In the past, both the NI and HVP have been very not extremely as hostile as Barr is being to both of the other parties, but we're seeing an even further shift in the in HVP NI relations, and in future there has been there might be a possibility of an HBP NI coalition, which might be the largest shift in Harlonian politics we've ever seen.
I would agree.
Um,
As
yeah.
at the last election, afterwards, HPP leadership immediately moved towards a coalition with Bark. As it stands, I do not see that being. I don't see that being the case. Next election, because the Bar HPP coalition has been fraught with what I would say has been very publicly seen as infighting. As an example, with the budget, a simple budget was not able to be passed by the coalition for over a full month, which was very uh, it, it it was definitely not viewed well among the public, and the fact that it happened, it needs serious well, there it there needs to be a serious look within Bar on if they can assemble a coalition with NI, or if they can assemble a coalition with HPP. And in the HPP, now relations are to the point where they likely won't immediately look towards a coalition with Bar. They very well could, in fact, do a coalition with NI, which would be a grand coalition if NI places second next election. And
Mhm.
if NI places third, then it will be another coalition where the first and third largest party are in coalition together. And if that's the case, then there's a very real chance that NI moves into a supporting role in Harlem politics rather than the main opposition, and Bar moves into the opposition, and
Mhm.
then HVP continues as the largest party. That, or if either of them come first place, then the HVP becomes the opposition, and NI either becomes the supporting towards the HVP or Bar, and vice versa for
Mhm.
Bar's position.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. With that,
Any
uh,
other points you'd like to make, Niche?
not particularly. Well, okay. I suppose I do want to make some closing points before we close off. But this result, this election result, it's largely indicative of polling, and if that polling is to be believed, then it's gonna leave a mark on the HPP, on Bar, and very well NI, as this it's it whilst not the most significant result in Harlonian history by a very wide mark, it is definitely going to be an indicator of future trends. And if that indicator is good or bad, it's yet to be seen, and obviously up to each and own's opinion. But we'll see where this
Hmm.
goes, and depending on where it goes, obviously it'll go somewhere. So yeah. Could
Yeah.
you got any closing remarks?
Thank No, thank you so much for having me, Niche, and we look forward to broadcasting next election.
I agree wholeheartedly, and thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Hmm.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. This has been fun to cover, and hopefully next election we'll be back again doing even more coverage. And if you want more regular coverage, I would recommend reading the Harlan Times, for which me and Code both write in. And
Hmm.
yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for reading if you do, and see you next time.